this is exciting. I'm here today with Todd Sattersten, who is the publisher at and owner of Bard Press, a book publisher that works with authors to create best-selling books in business, personal development, and technology. And it has a fascinating business model, which we will be talking about. But before Bard Press, Todd served as general manager of IT Revolution and president of business book retailer 800 CEO Read. Always sad that that's gone. He's the co-author of the 100 Best Business Books of All Time, and his latest book, out in October, is 100 Best Books for Work and Life. Todd, I don't think anybody is better qualified to join me in the Extraordinary Business Book Club podcast. Welcome.
I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled and happy to be
We are
here.
going to geek out for a whole half hour just talking about this, but it's going to be so great. I'm so looking forward to this. But first of all, let me congratulate you on the upcoming launch. I know it isn't, we're speaking in May and it isn't until October, but I've seen a proof and it's looking good. 100 Best Books for Work and Life. And the obvious question is, when you say best, what do you mean by that? How do you judge the best?
Right. No, I think that's a great question. So for me, in creating a collection, like we're trying to get down to like 100 books, what's something manageable that might be helpful for people? So the first thing for me is always, what are the most common problems people deal with? So let's make sure that we put books and address problems that people are working with on a common basis. So that starts to narrow the category a little bit. Like, so for us in this book, we have 25 chapters, very short chapters, and each chapter has maybe 4 books in it. And what we're trying to address is like really specific topics that people could read a table of contents and go, oh yeah, I've got that problem.
It's like a
I'm
diagnostic
working on
tool,
this
isn't it?
thing.
I love that.
It is, and it's what we tried to do is get a little bit away from the traditional publishing categories, like what you would see on a bookshelf, because a lot of times there's a lot of great stuff hiding in general management, in marketing. So what we want to do is get that touch more specific. So common problems are super important to me. I would say the second one is, I think great books redefine the problem that you're working on.
Say that again.
Right?
That's important.
It is, right? Great books redefine the problem. Because if we walk around going, oh yeah, I've heard that. Like, I'm working on that. I've got it covered, until someone comes along and says, yeah, but what if you thought about it like this instead? Will you then even consider new solutions? So if I redefine the problem for you on the front side, I'm probably going to give you different solutions to the problem on the back side. And so better, more interesting problem definitions are really important to me in the book. And then the third one is just how we've always judged, books by the design, the quality of the writing. It's a particular form of communication. So it's just, it's more than subjective. It's, you read enough of these, you and I have read enough, and I think your listeners probably have too. In 10 pages, you can know if a book is working for you. And I mean that usually as a personal thing.
But it's a visceral thing as well, isn't it? The experience.
It's a visceral thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so the third piece is just, gosh, did I enjoy reading this? Do I think someone else would enjoy reading?
Yeah, lovely. And what great criteria as well to think of as a writer. Like if somebody were judging this book, what would they think about how I'm framing the problem? What would they think about how it's coming across, my tone of voice, the experience of reading it, how well I lead people through it, all of that stuff. So yeah, terrific. Thank you. And how did you go about I mean, I've got this vision of you sort of sitting there with books spread all around you on the floor, sort of tossing ones behind you and prioritizing others.
Right. If we moved the camera, we would see the piles as well. Right. But I would say part of it is 20 years of being in the industry. I think part of it was recommendations that a lot of times I probably knew the books that I think kind of fitted into a given category. If I was thinking about goal setting, man, I probably knew the 3 books up front. And then it was kind of sourcing what might be the 4th book that would sort of solve that. So I think a lot of it is just being next to it for as long as we have, and having worked on publishing books, you spend a lot of time looking at the books that are published. So there's this kind of naturalness to, gosh, what would I want to share with people, having gone through this so many times with working with authors on the books that we've published.
One thing I noticed as well, and it made me laugh that you started with Carol Dweck's mindset, because there's a sort of unwritten law of publishing business books is that you have to reference mindset at least once in there. So there is that sort of sense of, which books have led and shaped the conversation, which books get picked up by other books and referred to and built on. There's something of that in it as well, isn't there?
I absolutely think there is. I think that um, there are some cases, like a great example of this is Anders Ericsson and his book Peak. A lot of people know him by the 10,000
Mm.
hour rule because of Malcolm Gladwell, but they haven't actually read his work. So for me, it was really important to say, hey, listen, you know this from this other place. You probably don't even know the guy's name. Gosh, go read his book because the book is really good and it gets you even closer to the idea that he's talking about. And as a matter of fact, he would tell you, hey, this 10,000 hour thing, I may have been a little bit
It's a little
misrepresented
bit
and let
more
me go
complicated
deeper
than
on
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that part's really important to me. Like it's awesome to know about Dweck. I was in a room last night talking about, believe it or not, Carol Dweck, and no one had heard of Carol Dweck.
No.
And I thought, oh my gosh, what an amazing opportunity to describe her work and why it matters. But most people have heard it in reference. Gosh, go read the book because the book is amazing and you'll be able to go even deeper.
And books are amazing generally. I mean, you and I are not going to fall out about this. We know that. But I'm really increasingly interested in the longevity of the book. I mean, who's I've been in publishing what 32, 33 years. People have been talking about the death of the book ever since I joined. Here it still is,
Right?
and
Yeah.
every year I think, well, we can't take it for granted. What is it that books specifically do for us cognitively and as people?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a great question. Um, and it's more than the 20 or 30 years we've been in the industry. We're working on 550 years since Gutenberg, right? And I don't take that
Mm.
lightly. I mean, I think about that really, that the codex format, the bound, like on the, depending on which culture, left or right side that it's bound, that has held up. I mean, I always think it took 60 years to even put page numbers. Like it took 60 years to get the page numbers as a feature in a book. Like it took a lot of figuring out to get to the book as a format as being effective. Um, I think that books demand our
Mhm.
attention. I think that's why we actually like them. They demand our attention. They, in a world that is more and more and more trying to distract us, trying to fragment that attention, trying to put it into the smallest possible piece they can, whether the TikTok video or it's the one block of the quote that you want to read from the author. Um, I think the book itself demands our attention because I always think about when they do studies of how people read. Um, I'm always amazed. The conclusion I always come to with this research is that the reader's in
Hmm.
charge, right? Versus a movie, versus even a song, a speech. And I mentioned this research because when you look at eye scans, it's very interesting. People read two or three sentences and
Yeah.
then they'll go back and they'll often reread. And we know this kind of passively, but a lot of times we're just not even cognizant that we're doing it. But we are in control of the speed of the narrative.
Where we
Um,
pause.
we're in control of how much comprehension we've had of
Mm.
it. And I think we want that. We want that. Can I get as close to this as possible? And we want, I mean, I think reading a book is sometimes like a walk in the park, that you've slowed things down, you're in this present moment working on this very particular thing. And I think we want more of that in our lives. And I think that's why books are still
I was
around.
so interested that you used the word they demand our attention because you're right, of course, and there's an awful lot demanding our attention at the moment. Do you know what I mean? All and I think there is
Yes.
something about we originally, I was digital development director. I thought ebooks would just replace books. Actually, there's something about the offlineness of them which allows you to reclaim
Yes.
your attention and, as you say, sort of do it at your own speed, co-create, make notes, underline. There's something about the physicality of a book as well that
Yes.
is good for us, and it not so. And we're talking specifically about business books here, and that co-creation, that what does this mean for me, that pausing to think, that making notes, that's the sort of stuff that doesn't go on so much in fiction, but actually the book is a great format for that, isn't it?
Yeah. So let me, I love that you mentioned fiction right there because a good friend of mine, we've had conversations about this between fiction and nonfiction, and particularly the genre of this prescriptive nonfiction, right? Business, self-help, whatever this whole category is you want to talk about. And her comment was, these kinds of books, you're the
Ah,
protagonist.
what a great phrase. Yes. You're the hero.
What a great phrase.
Yeah.
Yes, you're the hero. That and I think when the author puts themselves
Mm.
down and brings the reader forward and they make them the protagonist, that is when we feel that viscerality that you were talking about before. And so I think when we see ourselves as the hero of the story, of the, hey, there's this possibility um, of getting better, and this is what that journey might look like. Um, I think it just becomes as incredible and as powerful a tool as fiction can be.
And that makes me think of
Um,
Donald Miller and his How to Build a Story brand, and that idea that, as the author, you're not the hero, you're the guide. The reader
no,
is the hero. And so many people forget that, don't they? Yeah, really powerful reminder.
yes,
I could go on talking about business books forever, but I want to talk specifically about Bard Press because you have
okay.
the most fascinating business model, and it makes it slightly sort of takes my breath away because it's so audacious, but so effective. So yeah, how do you do things at Bard, Todd?
Yeah, so I always like to start by saying we've been doing this for 30 years because the next part is a little bit unbelievable, which is we only publish one book a year. And people go, "Oh my God, one book a year!" And if you talk to people in the publishing side of things, they go, "Oh my gosh, one book a year! I'd love to
Sounds
just do one book a
amazing.
year." So it's
What if the
amazing,
author
right?
doesn't deliver?
And then well, oh, if we'd like the checklist, we could work through the checklist of the problems and the challenges of it, and we could also work for the similar checklist of the opportunities that it provides. Um, what I would say is that the model was started by the founder of the press, Ray Bard, and he created it really for three reasons. Reason number one is it's better for the author. Like we have the ability to focus solely with that author on the development of their book, on the launch of their book, and then really on the continued um, building of awareness of the book after the book comes out because we work on so few books. So it's good for the author. It's good for the reader because the books are actually better. Like we just literally get to spend more time with them. And I don't think that's always magical. It's not like it absolutely means that the books are going to be better, but our hypothesis is that extra time that we get to spend with our books and with our authors makes better books for the reader. And I think the third one that's just really important is I think it just, when you're running a small business, you want to build a business that matches you and what you like doing. And Ray loved the idea of a very small team. Right now, it's 3 people here at Bard spending enormous amounts of time with that author to create the best possible thing. And so it's the love of
Mm.
that versus I think it's something different if you're doing something else. And so I think it's the triangulation of those 3 things that makes it interesting and cool.
You can tell you're a business book geek because you talk in threes as well, which is sort of so
Yes, there has to be a trinity. There has to be some.
that's so funny.
It's
Uh,
true.
when you choose a book, that's got to be a huge deal for you. I'm
Yes,
just imagining being a
it
fly
is.
on the wall in your editorial meetings. What does that look like?
I think uh, we've spent a lot of time in this, and there's actually 12 items on a checklist, and there needs to be a very strong yes to almost every one of
Mm.
those questions for us to do it. And what I would say is, and my guess is this won't surprise you, many times the author is actually more
Yeah.
important than the book in our model. In
Now,
our
when you
model.
say the
Um,
author, what's that shorthand for?
yeah. So I'm looking for a set of things in my model when we're working with an author. So I'm looking for somebody who's been working on a problem for
Yeah.
10 years, no less. Um, because I want them to have thoroughly thought about the problem before we start talking. I want someone who has already found a following and an audience and a set of people that they're delivering value to. Um, I want someone who's had to sell something. I want someone who's either worked in sales, marketing, or has built their own business as entrepreneurship, because guess what? Launching books is really hard and you're going to get a lot of no's in that process. So, have you already built kind of some of those muscles to be able to do that? I'll give you one more. For us, we want someone who has demonstrably showed us that they care about book culture, that they want to contribute to this canon of whatever area that they're working in, whether it's business development, whether it's leadership, whether it's marketing, whether it's coaching, like whatever whatever the world is, they know the space already. They've read the other books, and they know almost coming to us, hey, here's where my book fits, and I think there's something unique that we're going to say. So there's just a few of the ideas that we think
I
about.
love that. I've got this sort of vision in my head of a noisy conversation at a dinner table. Everybody's talking, and then suddenly the bard author clears his throat, and everybody just stops because they know you're just going to
Right.
have one thing. Well, actually, the one thing is one of your books, isn't it? But it's
Yeah.
going to really matter, and it's such a refreshingly different approach to the
Yes.
noisiness of content creation, social media, that kind of received wisdom that more is more.
Agreed. Yeah, and it's really hard. I think that the clarity that you just spoke about there is probably the most important item that we work on. I would say it's 80% of the problem. If you walk into a bookstore and you look across the shelf, it's funny how quickly you go, yeah, not that, not that, not that. But I'm not sure most people think about why did they say not that? And most of the time it's because they don't know how the book's going to
Mm.
help them. Like it's not actually clear to them from the cover. And frankly, literally from the title, subtitle, the images on the cover, the reader has to know how it is they're going to be helped. So that process of getting to that level of clarity that someone's going to see it and in a second be able to go, yes, that's what I need. And how sometimes, even with all the work we do, sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't.
Well, yeah. Ain't that the truth?
Right? Size the book publisher.
Yeah. And there's also that famous thing, if you've got sort of 5 editors sitting or the marketing team or whatever, sitting in a meeting, and have 6 opinions on a cover, can't you? It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's true.
How do you see this? Well, books generally, but business books specifically. What's your prognosis for them?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. Um, I think what we're seeing right now is that it's getting very difficult to see the difference between what a business book is and what a self-help book is.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's very interesting to pay attention to. Um, and classically, I would have said that self-help books are ones that tend to spend more time on the problem. They probably spent 75% of the book focused on the problem, and maybe that last 25% focused on, hey, what are the solutions? Business books tend to have the exact opposite ratio. We tend to talk about the problem efficiently, effectively, try to give all the important stuff, and then give a lot of room for the solution. And I think what we're starting to see is like it's a little bit harder to tell the difference between those two books, between those ratios, between I think business books tend to focus on success, outward success, right? I'm going to get the better job. I'm going to start the business. There's something outward that I want to express as a result of it. Self-help tends to be inward. It tends to be, I'm working on something that's like just causing me some kind of pain and suffering. There's a relationship that's not working for me. There's I'm procrastinating. So the combination of those two and how both of them are equally important to each other is making the category a little bit different. So, and I think what we're seeing, and we could see in the sales data, is what's being shelved in self-help is selling more now than what's selling in business. And I think that's something in our line of work that we need to pay attention to, whether it's, do our books need to be over
Mm.
in self-help? Maybe,
And it's also
maybe,
about where they're
or
selling,
something
isn't it?
else.
Because the bookshelves in a bookshop are one thing, and they have changed a lot over the last 10 years. I mean, there's fewer
Yes.
of them for one thing,
Yes.
but actually direct sales through e-learning platform, not e-learning platforms so much as corporate resources, electronic platforms, and so all that's happening as well. Business book clubs. So there's the non-traditional routes direct to business. I think are more
Yes.
interesting perhaps than they've ever been.
Yeah, I think that I'm not so much like, if we went back to what's important about our authors, I don't tend to be someone who's like, you need this many people on your email list and you need this many people um, social media followers or whatever the case might be. But I am interested in the business that
Yeah.
they're running. I am interested in the clients that they're working with, whether that's, a wide spectrum of more of a business to consumer, or if it's a B2B style. And I think it's that it always has been, but I think it's even more so that there's even more power available to authors for them to do those
Yeah.
direct sales. And so that's a big part of our model when we work with authors is, gosh, we want to, like I would say one of our hypotheses, because we could spend so much time with our authors, that we actually make them better in a lot of ways, but in particular as
Yeah.
booksellers. Like, how does this book fit into what you're doing, and showing them that there's a really good return on investment for integrating this into your
I mean, that's
business.
the
And then what
only
does
return on
that
investment,
mean?
isn't it, really? 'Cause
That's correct. I mean,
given how
yes.
sort of cheap books are. But I think that's, and also the way that I think this is something that future-proofs the book in a sense, because what really moves the needle is experience. It's listening to the person, it's the training, it's the sort of in the moment stuff, it's talking about stuff with other people. This is what really engages us with ideas, isn't it? And then you take away the book, and those two things together are so much more than the sum of the parts, because the experience ends and the book, it can feel lonely, but when you've got the two together in combination, man, that's powerful.
Yeah. And it gets back to I think the point we were making earlier of, I can dip back into that book. It's like the author's with
Right,
me
I've got a
now.
little bit of the
Like, and they're
author
on the
right here. It's
shelf.
on the shelf. I can see it. It reminds me immediately of that concept, that commitment I made. Yeah,
Yeah. And it's like 8 hours of being
yeah,
with them. Like, if you
so
think about
intimate.
kind of the length of the book, if they were going to talk to you, it's 4, 6, 8 hours of
Mm,
time with them. And so that, in addition, creates greater connection between that author and
yeah,
that reader.
and also you value the any time that you do spend with them more because of the book and because of that sense of them having you say it is
Yes.
really a lovely synergy. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
Todd, there's so much I want to talk to you about, and I'm running out of time, and I'm hating myself for this. But I'm going to ask you. I always ask my guests for their best tip for a first-time business book writer. So
Okay.
I limit you to one, but you're probably going to ignore me.
To one. Okay. 10,000 copies. My biggest piece of advice to authors is, don't go commercially publish a book till you know you can sell 10,000 copies. And I say that because we ran research on this, and what we found is that if you can't sell 10,000 copies of your book in the first year that it's out, there's only a 1 in 10 chance it will ever sell more than 10,000 copies in its lifetime.
That's so. But maybe, I mean, do you mean through the trade, or do you mean through bulk deals, or
I
in
mean,
total?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, what's interesting though is, on the other side of that 10,000, your ability to make those next benchmarks, whether it's 25,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 copies, is markedly better. It's something like, to get to 25,000 copies, there's a 40% chance you're going to do it. To get to 50,000 copies, it's something like 48% chance you're going to do it. There's something like, even to get to 100,000 copies, if you could pass that 10, you have a 1 in 10 chance of getting to 100,000 copies. So there's something about that number right there. Now, that doesn't mean, I don't want to stop people from self-publishing books or considering smaller projects that might help them build platform. But I'm just saying, when you get really
Mm.
serious about wanting to put a book out in the world that you want to have an impact that moves way out beyond you, don't do it till you have a clear line of sight to 10,000
Well, let's
copies.
unpack that a little bit more. How does an author get that clear line of sight to 10,000 copies?
Yeah. So I think that so I'm probably going to highlight some things we've already talked about. Are you working on a problem that people care about? Have you identified the felt need that people are going to go, gosh, I need to stop and I need to read that book? Right. And sometimes we're just working in really, really small problem areas, like really, really specific small spaces. And that's fine. Yes, publish the book, but do it in a particular way that reduces your risk. But, like, for Bard, if this won't surprise you, we generally want to publish a book that we think in its lifetime will sell 100,000 copies. in its lifetime. So we give ourselves a lot of time to be able to do that, but that's the bar we set for ourselves. And what that means is there's only certain books that we can publish. Like the problem area and the number of people who are helping has to be pretty large for us to have the level of confidence that we're talking about. And so make sure you get the felt need right. I think that's the most important thing. It's I think it's the thing that people skip past the most, that they think, oh, I've got this figured out. I know what it is that people want. Don't I just caution people, don't be like, give yourself as many ways as possible to confirm that there is a felt need out there and that people want to read it in a book. Like that's another thing. Is this the right concept to teach in a book? So there's a couple of
Yeah, it's
ideas.
brilliant. And I think that it's so easy, isn't it, to start from what you know. You're cursed with knowledge as an author. You know what will help people, you know. But if they don't recognize that, if you're not speaking the language that they're speaking when they're talking about the problem, yeah, you've lost them. Brilliant.
Yes.
Excellent tip. Thank
Yes.
you. And this is going to be interesting. Recommend us a book. I mean, I know you've got several hundred of them. Just wait, it was going to be one. What book do you think everybody listening to this just should read? I bet it's going to be a Bard Press book, isn't it?
I think that so usually what I say to people is, because that's a common question, right? I usually want to then respond back, well, what's the problem you're
Right.
working on? Like, let's be able to get a little more specific. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pick a big enough problem that I think a lot of people are working on that would be worthwhile. So I'm a huge fan of a book called Your Brain at Work by David Rock.
The scarf model is so it's like a mindset, isn't it? You can't not use it.
Right. And it's for those who aren't familiar with the book, I think Rock does the best job of taking the neuroscience and applying it to the context of the workplace. Um, and uh, and he's just really honest about it. And what's so fascinating about the book is that there'll be a chapter about a given topic. There's a little bit of a narrative actually in the book. There's a little bit of like a fable kind of woven
He's a good
in, which
storyteller.
can be tricky, but it works. So we see this scene of something happens, and usually it doesn't turn out particularly well. And then he stops and he says, okay, here's what's actually going on in the character's brain. Here's what's actually going on. And then he rewrites the scene with the person with that knowledge of what's actually happening neurologically to them. So whether it's being flooded by emotion, whether it's procrastination, whether it's realizing that the prefrontal cortex is actually very, very small, and the demands that we put on it oftentimes are too much, so that, like, this is probably the biggest thing, and I've been using it more and more lately. There's only so much that fits, like, in this little area in our forehead. You've got to write stuff down. You have to have lists. You have to store things in other places to give your mind more space to actually do the work that it's really good at. And so I would say Your Brain at Work by David Rock.
Stellar.
Right? And I already got a big yes from you, so I know I'm on the right track.
And we were talking earlier about that overlap between business books and self-help. That's such a great example because he uses, I mean, it's Your Brain at Work, and most of it's about work and how to navigate work better and relationships at work better. But he also brings in, talking to your kids, and it's all the same brain, right? It's all the same life.
Yes.
And those boundaries are porous.
And it's part of the reason, it's part of the reason that with this new version of the 100 Best, I wanted to call it Work and Life, because I really want people to see the kinds of books that we're talking about, like these, that work just as well in the work environment as they do in all these other parts of our lives that really matter. And so by going from, don't get me wrong, I love the first version of the book of, when we did the 100 Best Business Books of all time, but I love that I could draw from a much wider range of books for this new one that I think just, again, helps people in a much wider range of areas.
It feels very post-pandemic as well, of our times.
It does, yeah.
I love that. And if people want to find out more about Bard Press, Todd, more about you, more about your books, where should they go?
Yeah, super easy. Go to bardpress.com and you find information about our process. We have a blog, all the books that we're publishing. Lots of great resources there.
Fantastic. I do hope that we have managed to communicate something of the raw joy that we have around business and self-development books. I hope that has been contagious, but it's been just such a joy to talk to you. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Allison.